Welcome and thank you for standing by. Currently, all participants are in listen-only mode. Today's webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be posted publicly. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Now I'd like to turn the call over to your host for today, Omari Wooden.
Thank you, Lisa, and good afternoon. As stated, my name is Omari Wooden with the U.S. Census Bureau. I'd like to welcome everyone listening today to today's webinar of the Puerto Rico webinar series. This webinar is a two-part and a four-part series. Hosted by the U.S. Census Bureau, this webinar series is created to highlight the data and the resources available for Puerto Rico. In addition to the data, we will also provide an overview of our data tools that you can use to access this data. This data is helpful for businesses looking to possibly open a new business or expand their existing businesses by learning more about their industry. Economic development organizations also use this data to learn more about industries at different geographic levels. So these webinars are going to take place every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with the last one being held on November 13th. Each webinar is completely free, and again, a great way to learn and understand the resources that are available from the U.S. Census Bureau. Our next webinar, which will be focusing on county business patterns and Census Business Builder, will be held on November 6th, again at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please be aware that after our speaker has completed his presentation, we're going to open up the webinar for a queue for questions and answers. Also, we will be using the question and answer feature to receive your questions. So at the bottom right part of your screen, you're going to see three dots. Once you click on those three dots, you're going to have the option to ask your questions. Some of the questions we're going to answer in that chat area, but other questions we're going to share with the larger group to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to hear some of the more prominent questions. Lastly, each one of these webinars are going to be recorded and available to you at a future date. So if anyone your colleagues are interested, you can always get this information because it will be recorded and available in the future. You can go to the next slide. So at this point, I would like to introduce Hinat Kabidi, who will provide an overview of the international trade, specifically highlighting data in Puerto Rico. At this point, I'll turn it over to Hinat.
All right, thank you, Omari. Thanks for the nice introduction. I am actually really excited to present this international trade data for Puerto Rico. It's great timing. Like Omari said, my name is Hinat Kabidi. I've been working in the International Trade Macro Analysis branch, which is one of the economic indicators where we publish the U.S. Trade with in goods and services on a monthly basis. We're part of the Economic Indicators Division. And basically what I want to go through today, as you see on your screen, is the agenda. It may not follow exactly as it is there, but for the most part, this would be what I'll be covering. I'll talk a little bit about what we mean by data for Puerto Rico, and then I'll get into some of the data that we have available as it relates to trade flow between Puerto Rico, to and fro Puerto Rico, and then also diving into what makes up in terms of product categories, the commodities. And then I'm going to jump into the Customs District of Puerto Rico, which is San Juan, and the data that we have available regarding that. And then quickly navigate through our website to show you where to get that data, and then we'll jump into Q&A if you have any questions. So as I mentioned for this presentation, in reference to data related to Puerto Rico, we're looking at two types of topics for data. One is trade flow, so statistics on shipments from the U.S. to Puerto Rico, so the continental U.S. to Puerto Rico, and then back from Puerto Rico to U.S. This data is furnished by the Electronic Export Information, or EEI, which must be filed with customs officials. and shipments by qualified exporters who submit data directly to the U.S. Census Bureau. The other is a customs district. Puerto Rico or San Juan district is a customs district within U.S. Customs territory, and its trade with foreign countries is included in the U.S. export and import statistics. So we have that data available in USA Trade Online and our API and a lot of our data products. So I'll go through that as well. But I just wanted to take this time to make a distinction between what we're talking about in terms of Puerto Rico trade data. So let's begin with trade data with Puerto Rico. In other words, shipments that go to Puerto Rico from the continental US. So we're looking at a time series for the last 10 years. And we ended up in 2022 close to 30 billion, which is a record year. And 2023 is through June. So this data is through June for 2023 and is slightly above 15 billion. So it's also tracking, I mean, I can't project now, but it's also tracking to be around the same value as in 2022. But normally we don't usually go over the 25 billion mark. So definitely 2022 is the highest that we have seen it for shipments that go to Puerto Rico. And shipments from Puerto Rico, on the other hand, are higher than shipments to Puerto Rico. So in 2022, we have it at 41.1 billion. However, we've had years in the past above the 50 billion mark, specifically 2015, 2016, and 2017, where we surpassed the 50 billion mark. So definitely it's not a record, but it's still high enough, so around the average that we've seen it in the last 10 years. Again, this data for 2023 is also through June. But when we dive into the product categories, so what I looked at is, if we take a look at the last 5 years, 2018 through 2022, what we see is the top 15 commodities accounted for 33% of the total trade, in total, like for the 5-year total trade. And that total trade for the 5 years is 129.5 billion. But what makes up the cross section of the products is, in general, pharmaceutical products make up a significant amount. And you're going to see that on the import side as well, is because Puerto Rico, a lot of the pharmaceutical companies have a lot of their manufacturing plants in Puerto Rico. So it kind of makes sense that the number one trade in product categories, pharmaceutical products. And next to it is, so it's at 68%. And medical devices and equipment, still kind of like in the healthcare industry, is 8%. We also have cellular phones around 4%, passenger vehicles from the US around 9%. And then we have other, mostly other is low value shipments. So low value is what we consider the under $2,500, where exporters are not required to file if it's below, if the value of the shipment is below $2,500. So if we look at, in contrast to the shipments to Puerto Rico, what do we get from Puerto Rico to the continental US? Again, looking at 5-year data, for the imports, it's actually significantly higher for the contribution of the top 15 commodities. They account for 80% of the total trade in the last 5 years, which is 232.4 billion. And again, a significant majority of it is pharmaceutical products. And then you have medical devices, organic chemicals. Mostly in that category is insulin and salt. So you look at these three broad categories, they are pharmaceutical and healthcare medical devices. So that tells the story that Puerto Rico significantly, what we get from there is pharmaceutical products that the pharmaceutical companies have set up their manufacturing plants. They get shipments back to the continental U.S. Because they have cheaper labor over there, and they use that as a manufacturing center. All right, so now I go to the Customs District of San Juan, or Customs District of Puerto Rico, which is located in San Juan. So in contrast, if we look at the imports and exports, and basically this is what is compiled in our data that we release on a monthly basis. So what is shipped out of the ports under San Juan, and what is imported to the ports of the custom districts of San Juan. So here's a graph that shows, as you can see here, when imports are significantly higher than exports. And although we have close to 12 ports, the significant ones are the ones that have data or like significant amount of shipments are San Juan International Airport, and a Port of San Juan, Aguadilla, Mayagüez, and Ponce. So these are the ones that where trade flows from and to foreign countries. And then if we look at, okay, what does it look like in terms of the method of transportation profile? In other words, how much comes in or goes out in vessel versus air. So when you look at exports, actually a lot of what's shipped out of the ports in Puerto Rico goes out by air, and then vessel for imports. So this shows right away that, San Juan International Airport moves a lot of the shipments, or we get the products to Puerto Rico through or out of Puerto Rico through San Juan International Airport, and the Port of San Juan gets most of the shipments for imports. So this is, again, data that we get from USA Trade Online to show you how you can go and set up an account and really get the data regarding to Puerto Rico or any other district, customs district within the United States. Again, sticking with Customs District of San Juan, this is a profile of what the top 5 countries look like for imports and exports. So the top 5 countries for exports accounted 48% of the total exports, and for imports, 53% of imports were from the top 5 countries. So if we look at exports, Canada and Mexico make up our number 1 and number 2, and then we have China at 15%, Japan at 8%, and United Kingdom at 8%, and you have the values next to the countries. And it's pretty much similar for imports. The only difference is we have Germany instead of United Kingdom for imports, and China as a top country, and then we have Mexico, and then Canada, and Japan, and Germany. So again, I got all this data from USA Trade Online. I just wanted to show you the power of what we have available for free and how you can access that data. And I'll go through that, navigate through our website to show you how to access that and set up accounts. Here's a map of Puerto Rico, just to show you which ports the trade flows to and out of Puerto Rico. San Juan is right here. So this one over here is the San Juan International Airport, and this one is a port of San Juan. So as you can see, a significant majority of the 16 billion in exports and 21 billion in imports flows through these ports. One is the airport, and then the other one is the port. So for the Port of San Juan, import is higher than the international airport because almost all of it comes through vessels. And conversely, of course, it's an international airport, so basically all the method of transportation for this is air. And then you have the other ports, which are significantly less. Some of them have minimal amount, like Mayagüez, for example. Export is 765,000 for 2022, so that's really, and even imports is 36.4 million, but it's considered for annual volume that's really low. And then Fallardo over here is also definitely under 0.1 billion. So this gives you like a good flavor of how trade flows to and fro Puerto Rico, and where the ports are located. So where do I get all this data? So the trade data that flows, like what I mentioned earlier with the trade flow, currently is available with in the FD 895, or U.S. trade with Puerto Rico and U.S. possessions. So it's basically, it has Puerto Rico and other U.S. territories data on an annual basis. And this is available in this link, and I'll show you where that is located in a PDF format. But we also have it as a data product that can be purchased on a monthly basis. So this is our current setup, and then we get the customs district data in USA Trade Online and the API. But for the sake of this webinar, I will cover mostly how to access the data in USA Trade Online. So one of the limitations of the FD 895 right now is you can access the data only in a PDF format, and it's only published on an annual basis for the free version, that is. So we have been working on creating a tool for users that would make it accessible to get data on a monthly basis, and then to also have different aggregations at the district level, at the territory level. So one thing that is in the works right now and is coming soon, unfortunately, I can't tell you when the timing is, but generally I can say it's coming in 2024 with some level of confidence. So, but in 2024, we're really excited actually to release this tool. It's called the U.S. Territories Dashboard. And like I mentioned, it has a lot of features. It definitely beats what we have now with the PDF. So it's totally, in my opinion, an upgrade, and a lot of people's opinion is an upgrade from what we have right now. And it has different kinds of aggregation. So you can aggregate the data in by district level, by territory level, and then you can also do it in combination, having data in district and territory. And then we also have visualizations for that. So we also have another, this is another screenshot for this, and the visualization that we have available that you could take, and once it's published, we could take a look at, is the same thing that I did in table format. You can do import and export data as a line graph, or we could take a look at it in the cross-section or stack bar graph for commodities. And Typical of like most modern platforms, you can download this in different formats: PDF, CSV, Excel, and hovering over the graph itself tells you exactly what the source of the data. So in other words, what commodity it is, a value. Definitely excited about releasing this tool and making it available for people to have more data about our territories, and most importantly, Puerto Rico, because Puerto Rico has a significant amount in trade versus the other territories. So that concludes, but before I go into Q&A, what I'm going to show you is kind of navigate through our website. So our website is where you can access all things about international trade statistics is simply census.gov/trade. And it will get you to this website. And it has a menu on the left-hand side. And in the center is what the different kind of tools or reports and releases that we have published. So under other press releases is where we get the Puerto Rico data, the FD895 that I showed in the couple of slides ago. So FD895, U.S. trade with Puerto Rico and U.S. possessions, and the available years. The latest one that we released is for 2022. And if you click on the web page, it will take you to the report itself, which you can download. Okay, so that is basically how we currently have the data available to, if you want to see the trade flow between the U.S. And Puerto Rico, and then also other territories. And then I mentioned USA Trade Online. Hold on a second. Okay, so USA Trade Online, let me go back to here. Is our online database that has all of our publicly available data for international trade. So it's basically our go-to website or tool to access data. And the only requirement is for users to sign up and set up an account, but it's available freely. And then a lot of the data that I pulled as it relates to Customs District of San Juan is accessed through USA Trade Online. This is an example of what I pulled earlier amongst many. For this webinar, actually, like in the last page, we'll provide our contact information, and you are more than welcome to contact us and set up a demo or how to set up an account or to get started and how to access data. So you can call the numbers on that page if you need any help in terms of navigating through this or getting started with this. Right, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Omari if you guys have any questions that we can answer or provide guidance to.
Cool. Thanks, Hanok. You can go to the next slide. So again, I'd like to thank Hanok for the great overview of the International Trade Program. So as he stated, at this point, we're going to open up and allow you the opportunity to ask questions for anything that we discussed in today's topic. Remember, if you have questions, to remember to use the question and answer feature at the bottom right part of your screen, the 3 dots, clicking on those dots, and then entering in your question. And then again, we will then be sure to ask some of those questions to Hanok at this point. So Hanok, one question that while you were doing the presentation that I just wanted to ask, as you were talking about the 2 data tools, USA Trade Online and some of the other features, how often is that data updated in terms of if somebody wanted to do a deeper dive into the data, how often is that tool updated?
So I mentioned earlier that we release our data at 8:30 in the morning on almost 33 to 35 days monthly. And then as soon as we release it at 8:30, USA Trade Online is typically updated within the half hour of that release. So it's updated monthly. And then the API similarly within 2 hours of publishing our data is available. So it's almost instantaneous, you can say, that we have it on this available the same day that we release our data.
Okay. A question that we did receive in the chat to just share, if your thoughts or questions or your perspective on one. So it's a two-part question. When we talk about pharmaceutical products, is that in references to pills or capsules, or do you have more of a larger definition of how we track pharmaceutical products? And also, too, what do you notice when you see after hurricanes or natural disasters hit? Anything that you see is reflected in the trade data?
So the first part, the category for pharmaceutical products includes a whole slew besides the drugs themselves, immunological products, like I mentioned, insulin and organic chemicals that are lumped in all together. Again, matter of fact, why don't I go right into USA Trade Online to kind of show you what commodities are included under pharmaceutical. So it says, so what I lumped in for the sake of making the chart simpler is the 2-digit, but at the district level, we can go down to the 10-digit. Because I'm in the ports area right now, so we can only access it to 6-digit, but it gives you an idea of what we are talking about. So just a quick flavor of what's under pharmaceutical products, human blood, animal blood, medicaments, meaning like drugs, bandages, pharmaceutical goods. So people can go in and really dissect it and then go within this Chapter 30 family to see what makes up the higher trade number. So, but for the sake of this presentation, I just wanted to give, hey, it's under the category of pharmaceutical products. So the second question was, wait a minute, I forgot.
Just seeing impact at when natural disasters hit Puerto Rico. Is anything that you've just seen over the years in terms of increased trade there or the decrease? Just speaking to that.
Yeah, I think what we've seen the last hurricane was in Maria that hit a couple of years ago. I forgot which, but immediately after is the trade flow. And again, you will see like at the customs district level, you don't see a whole lot of difference in terms of volume, but with the trade flow, which we just started analyzing right now, and it will make it available, is more shipments from the U.S. went to Puerto Rico because of the hurricane. So, but I can't tell you specifically how much more it was. During hurricanes, at least on the continental U.S. side, like Florida or the Gulf, what we see typically is if a particular port is shut down, the volume is picked up on another port on another side. So we see an uptick from one port to another or from one district to another, but only for like 1 month, just covering the time period that the port was affected. So typically a slight uptick from one port to another, but not that significant.
Okay. One question we also saw too, just to clarify between some of the data products and information, just to confirm, where can people find Puerto Rico to foreign country data? And then also to confirm Puerto Rico trade between US and Puerto Rico data, just to confirm, because we've got the FT $8.95, and then USA Trade
Right.
Online. Just want to confirm.
So the
restate.
Puerto Rico to US, continental US, or continental US to Puerto Rico is FD 895, which we are hoping to replace with this tool, the US Trade with Territories dashboard soon. But right now, what we have available is the annual data, which is published on an annual basis around February, March timeframe. Puerto Rico to foreign countries is through the USA Trade Online, but that's not Puerto Rico's, it's Puerto Rico data in terms of US trade for exports and imports is compiled from what is shipped from the customs district of San Juan or Puerto Rico. And that's accessible through what I went through the USA Trade Online, and San Juan is a district, and then these are all the ports. So this particular data set is for imports, but we also have it available for exports and a separate, so port level data, exports and imports at the district level. So if you want to get all of the ports lumped in San Juan Customs District, you look at these two, like for imports and exports, the under harmonized system classification. So USA Trade Online, we have two types of classification, the harmonized system and the NAICS. And the harmonized district level data is what has the most detail at the 10-digit level. So for the person that asked the question earlier as to, hey, I want to see what makes up the pharmaceutical shipments, that's where you would go to determine, oh, at what level do I want to look at it, at the 4-digit, 6-digit, or 10-digit level, how much granular you want to get. Mm-hmm. So it's up to the user to determine what kind of level of data that they would want.
And we've got another question that I'm going to get to. If you could do me a favor, could you go back to the slides? One thing I want to share with everybody that's dialed in is the importance of hearing your feedback. You see that Lisa posted it in the chat. You go to the next slide. You see that Lisa posted it in the chat that we do want to hear your feedback. So we want to take this opportunity to pause, and there's a link in the chat that Lisa posted. If you would click on that and then complete the quick survey, it just talks about what you enjoyed about today's webinar, some things that you would like to see more of regarding some of our webinar training. It only takes a couple of minutes to fill out. So again, that is certainly something that we value your opinion, your feedback. Some of the feedback that we have received is smaller content per webinar. And again, that's something that we have taken into consideration. So instead of having longer webinars, we started having shorter webinars with more specific topics. So your feedback is certainly appreciated. So I did want to make sure I pause for that. One of the things that you'll see on the screen right now is Henoch and one of his colleagues, Tia. That's their contact information. So again, if there's some questions that we aren't able to answer today, Henoch and Tia are both available to answer your questions. There is one question, Henoch, that I'm going to give you a heads up that I'm going to mention, but again, it might be something that might be a detailed question to resolve later. But again, their contact information, we'll leave that up once we're getting to the end of the presentation, just to make sure that if you all have questions, again, feel free to reach out to them. Okay, so back to the presentation and questions. One question, Henoch, that came up, and this is the question that might follow or it might require additional research, so you may not have off the top of your head. But a question came in about what is the size of trade, and it says within the U.S. compared to other countries, but I'm assuming that is referring to what is the size of trade between U.S. and Puerto Rico compared to other countries. So I'm guessing in terms of trade, is there any sort of comparables related to the rest of the world? And again, that I know is a very detailed question. That might be something you would have to sort of look at after the fact, but not sure if you knew that off the top of your head.
Well, because Puerto Rico is technically a territory, or from a data perspective, You can consider it like a state. So
Mm.
that when we're talking about trade with other countries, we're talking about U.S. trade. So Puerto Rico's trade is included within U.S. trade. So
Mhm.
we can't consider Puerto Rico as a country and then say Puerto Rico has this much trade with China, because that number is part of the U.S. total trade. So the only thing, and I would warn people not to do this, but to kind of get an idea is to see what the shipments are like in USA Trade Online from the Customs District of Puerto Rico to see the trade flow. But that is mostly like for imports, you would see all the pharmaceutical that would go into the manufacturing plants for pharmaceuticals are shipped back into the U.S., the continental U.S. So I wouldn't know what the trade flow would look like. We would require tracking shipments and looking at shipment records of how that plays out. But when we're talking about trade data with other countries, we're talking about under the umbrella of U.S. trade with other countries. So it's really tough to say, hey, this is because Puerto Rico doesn't independently trade with other countries. It's data that is lumped in our.
In terms of the U.S. Okay, good. Great clarification on that. I'm not seeing any other questions. So what I will do is
Oh,
just
Marika, but before, I
yes,
forgot
yes, go
to
ahead.
give a shout out to Tia Muslich, my partner, who um, really worked hard and then putting together the new dashboard. So I want to thank her for her contribution for this presentation, as well as for what she has done with this new tool that we're all excited about. So
Absolutely. And
she's
I'd
gonna
also
kill me
like
if I
to
don't say this now. Like all of them, all my coworkers are gonna kill me. So I might as well get it out of the way and save myself.
I'd also like to thank Tia because she has also been assisting with the questions online as well too. So some of the responses that you all are providing questions on, she is also providing some of those answers to those questions as well. So again, thank you, Tia, for your help on today's webinar. So again, I will see if there are any other questions. I'll give it another minute just to see. Again, as a reminder for everyone that's dialed in, again, if you get an opportunity, make sure you fill out our survey. Again, it'll take 1 or 2 minutes to, again, let us know more about what we could do better. Also, what we're doing well that we could possibly continue doing. Hinak, really quickly, could you go back 2 slides, I believe? Just want to remind everybody that these webinars, again, the next webinar in this series will be one of our annual economic programs called the County Business Patterns. And then we'll be highlighting one of our data tools called Census Business Builder, which now takes interactive data, an interactive map, and it overlays both economic and demographic data in a visual map that allows you to generate reports. You want to find out how many businesses are in a particular geography based on an industry. You can get that information from Census Business Builder to not only visually see this information, but to also use this information if you're looking to do a business loan, if you're looking to do a grant proposal. Census Business Builder is something that will be a great resource for that. So again, that will be next Monday, November 6th at 2 p.m. I will take one last look in the questions to see if we have any other questions. Okay, so one question that I will mention, talking about looking for the opportunity to sell small and medium-sized construction equipment, did not see that commodity in the analysis. What have you seen or an opportunity? So I'll actually answer part of that question. I think also too, this will be something that our partnership agencies, such as International Trade Administration and U.S. Commercial Service, their mandate is trade promotion. So they also assist with targeting businesses that are in particular industries. While to Hinnock's point, we provide information on the data of what is being exported and imported. We don't necessarily point to companies and specific businesses that are selling or importing those products due to disclosure reasons and so forth. So it's something that we also work very closely with U.S. Commercial Service on to, in some cases, identify some of those different types of industries, because that is their mandate to try to do that. But again, one thing that I would recommend for you is to make sure you dial back in next week as we talk about Census Business Builder, where you can at least find out more about the number of establishments in small and medium-sized construction equipment, or in just construction equipment in general in Puerto Rico. So that tool next week, I think, may speak more to your question in particular. So again,
Just
make
to
sure
add,
you.
just to add to
Yes,
what you said,
absolutely.
Omari, I'm glad you gave a plug-in for ITA. But if you are at the market research phase, definitely you can contact us. We can help you. We have another tool called Global Market Finder, which can, for your product or the product that you want to set up business for, you can see what kind of markets are available outside the U.S. And then the USA Trade Online. But you can directly contact us, and we'll definitely be glad to help you.
And to piggyback on Hinnock's plug for that, the Global Market Finder is a great tool, because if you take the 10-digit classification number, put it into the tool, and I'm actually going to post a link to this site as well. You put in the classification number, what this system will do is it will generate back to you everywhere this product is being exported around the world. So you can get a sense of, for let's say construction equipment, where is this product being manufactured? And depending on the classification number, if there is a unit of measure, I think Hinnock's probably going to go to it right now. If there is a classification number, you'll even be able to see the unit of measure for the product that is being exported. So Hinnock has it up right now. I'm actually going to put a link to it in the chat just to show you where he went. So we did get one other question, Hinnock, really quick. So for USA Trade Online, does this provide information on the port of unlading? So in reference to the port, so we've got port data for the export. Does it provide information on the port of unlading, which would technically be abroad?
Yeah, I mean, it's I always confuse this. I think district of unlading and ports of entry is how we have our data in USA Trade Online. And as soon as I say that, it will be vice versa. So, but if you can email me, I would definitely clarify that. But I want to say district of unlading, and then ports of entry is how we have our data.
Sounds good. So Hinnock, for the last thing, if you could put your contact information back up. I would like to thank everyone that logged into today's webinar. Thank you for your questions. Again, we have Hinnock and Tia's contact information available on the slide. So again, if you have questions, or if there was a question that you asked that you'd like to get more detail, please make sure you take the opportunity to reach out to them directly, and then they can give you more details to the question that you may have had. Again, I'd like to thank everyone that listened in and dialed into today's webinar. Again, our next webinar will be next Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we will be discussing county business patterns and one of our data tools, Census Business Builder. Thank you again. I'd like to turn it back over to Lisa for final instructions.
This concludes today's webinar. Thank you for your participation. You may disconnect at this time.